In this segment of my IGN Unfiltered conversation with legendary game designer Peter Molyneux, it turns out Peter's had some very interesting canceled games in his career. Let's hear him tell the backstory on some of those. You have some very interesting cancellations, two of them in fact.
Yeah.
I actually want to start, let's go back.
Yeah.
I want to ask you about BC.
Yeah.
Because BC is a game that very much captured my heart as behind closed doors at E3.
Yeah.
I want to say 2003, if I remember correctly, which was my first one. So, whatever, 2003, 2004, you showed BC to the press behind closed doors.
It was everything I wanted it to be. It was an open world, swimming pools of blood, this primitive world which you could take your tribe through.
With all these, the AI of the dinosaurs and the survival. I mean, it looked incredible. So, how close was it to being done, and what happened? Did Shane Kim and the Microsoft team at the time stop believing in it? Did you stop believing in it? I wanted to hear the BC story.
Yeah, the absolute story, as I recall, and you've got to be careful that this is substance abuse brain here.
Your version of the story.
My version of the story is this: it was all about focus. We just simply. Microsoft turned around to us and said, "We're worried that you're focusing on too many different things."
You personally, because BC was being done at your satellite studio, Intrepid. Not Lionhead proper.
These satellites were satellites, but they needed the idea of those satellites initially was, we'll help the studio, we'll help them get a publishing deal, they'll develop the game, we'll carry on with Lionhead developing our games. The reality is that they needed an enormous amount of support.
Their game became your game.
Exactly. It wasn't just me, it was some of the technical people and the business people, and it became an enormous, I just simply didn't have the hours in the day. There is one more part of this story which I should tell you, but it would take a very long time to tell you. And it's no one's ever been told this part of the story. It's a fascinating story.
You can't leave it hanging like that.
Well, I don't know if we got the time or that I've got the detail, and it's actually quite a shocking part of the story.
You're making it worse by.
I know. It's just basically. I'll sum it up.
Okay.
The City of London came to us and wanted us to float on the stock market.
I don't know what that means.
They wanted us to do an IPO.
Oh, okay. All right.
And to do an IPO, we needed a certain number of products. And they didn't give a shit about the business. They just wanted to make the money out of the IPO. Anyway, that's the foundation stone of the story, which I won't even bother going into.
Okay.
It was disastrous. It's worth going. It's a fascinating story.
But BC did move along, and you showed it to media. As I said, so I'm curious, how far was it?
It was. I mean, to answer that question, you have to understand about development and how.
I know a little.
And development and that time in the industry. That time in the industry, and this still exists. It's only recently this has stopped happening. What was happening is E3 was becoming so incredibly dominant.
Yes.
That teams would not spend a couple of weeks doing a demo, they would spend months doing a demo.
Yeah.
And they would make that demo just amazing. And it was kind of a nuclear arms race of how to make the demo more amazing. That demo didn't mean it was a great game, it meant it was a great demo.
Right, because it usually works where you break it off from the main build, right, and you polish up this E3 branch.
The actual reality is that it becomes a living thing in itself, and this living thing, at best, can be sliced off from the main development of the game. At worst, infects, and disastrously infects the game. So. As any coder will tell you, when you are coming towards the end of a project, that's when your structure goes completely out of the way. It's when think, oh, just sod it. I'll just type there. I'll just fix this bug. I don't care about whether it fits in the structure of it. And when you're running to E3, every demo, time runs out. You've got to do the demo. And that means your coding and your structure of your project gets very, very messy. And that's what happened with BC, and what happened with a lot of projects. And so what BC was a great demo, a truly great demo. But what had happened, and I think mainly because the team needed a little bit more guidance, that demo had actually destroyed any game that was there. It was just a great demo.
Huh.
So there came this point in time where, and the same had happened to Fable, by the way. Exactly the same had happened, is that it was kind of one demo that we could fix one, but we couldn't fix both. We could fix both with the right amount of funding, but Microsoft were already, umming and ahhing about it. And when they said, I think you should focus on one, it effectively killed off BC. But it was a very tough choice to make.
The idea was cool.
The idea was really cool, and my if I bet you that if Fable had faded away and we'd continued with BC, we'd be sitting here talking about BC3, and it'd probably be some disastrous where be set in space or something. I don't know.
So then the other one, which you've alluded to a couple times, is the real story of Milo and Kate. Another, you've already shared your feelings on Connect. But what, that was, that one gets brought up a lot with you as, sort of a almost smoke and mirrors thing. And so what really happened with that project?
Well, it was a little bit of a disaster. It started really when we were owned by Microsoft, and very early on in the relationship, they showed me this weird device called Natal. It wasn't called Connect, it was called Natal, and it was this.
Yeah, the code name.
It was quite a big thing that stuck on top of the monitor. It wasn't a small Connect thing, and they were talking about it being this device which had its own processor, which had a great field of view, which could recognize people's voices, an incredible spec to it. And I said, I would love to do a demo for it.
Yeah,
I've still got this demo. And it was called the Green Boy demo, and it was completely fake. And I did the demo, and it was shown to Don Matrick, and he absolutely loved it. And at that time, Microsoft was very much orientated towards, if Don Matrick, and I've got a lot of respect for Don, he has great intuition, and he's a real, he's really quite eccentric, but he was very good at being laser focused on certain things. And he said, I love this project. I think we should go ahead and build it, make it. I want you to come out, I want you to show it to Steven Spielberg, and go around to Hollywood and show it off, and that's exactly what we did. And we built this, and it was amazing technology. It was amazing technology. I can show you a video.
With the prototype of the hardware.
With the prototype of the hardware. I can show you a video that, and probably break all sorts of confidentiality things, of it being shown to members of the public that were brought in.
Focus group kind of thing.
Focus group, it's amazing technology. It was a complete and utter story. And the whole inspiration of that game was the joyful wonder that you get being a parent and seeing a child be inspired by what you do. And you could communicate, there was lots of tricks in it, but you could talk to Milo. It doesn't seem so amazing these days because we talk to Siri all the time. Yeah. But back in those days, you could talk to Milo, and this was really pioneering stuff. We'd send that stuff off to a company called Tell Me, which was owned by Microsoft, and they would come back with what the definition of what is. We'd set up because my point was, we're never going to be able to solve being actually saying anything to Milo, But if we get you into the right mindset, and you say, what are you doing, Milo? Or why are you climbing the tree, Milo? We can interpret those sentences. All that stuff worked. There were these magical moments of being able to put things into Milo's world. I mean, I've got a video on my computer. I was just looking through it. I mean, this magical thing of being able to put physical things into Milo's world. All of that stuff worked. As we were doing it, every time I went over to Seattle and met with the Connect team, and we've had to narrow the field of view.
Right.
We've had to downgrade the process. And the thing was, it was breaking their hearts as much as our hearts. So all that was going on. So the spec of Connect was going down. And then while that was happening, quite surprisingly, Microsoft hadn't yet decided who Connect was for, who the audience was for, which is a very surprising thing when you think about it. And it wasn't until very, very late on they decided the audience, but not too surprising really, I suppose, the audience was for people who wanted to use Connect in a party environment.
Yeah.
And which kind of, in the spec, by the time it got to that point, was so primitive. You had to do these sort of actions before it was kind of even recognized.
Right.
So if you think of Connect as a party device, where the hell does Milo fit in? It was challenging enough for the marketing people to think of how to market it, and the rest is kind of history. How are we doing for time? I feel like we've been.
Believe me, I've budgeted. So I know you're quite the conversationalist, and I appreciate it because these are great stories. And in fact, because I would be remiss if I didn't. You haven't given a lot of interviews in the last couple of years, and in fact, I'm not sure if you've commented on this publicly at all. I've got to ask you, how were you personally affected? How did you feel when you got the news of Fable Legends being shut down and then Lionhead itself?
Well, I mean, I've got to, tell you that it was a very strange day when that happened. Normally, I just sit at my desk and work away and very rarely even get up. And for some reason, I walked over to the window and was looking out the window. And now my office is kind of here. And Lionhead, I can still see, is about 50 yards. I'm next door. And I looked down, and I could see all these people coming out, and I could just sense that something bad had happened. And, Microsoft closed the studio. It absolutely broke my heart. I felt incredibly guilty.
Why?
Because I left, and, I couldn't help feeling maybe I left them in a bit of a hole,
You feel like you could have done something
I
about
would
it?
have. I don't know. I would have. Gone over there and just shouted at people until they agreed not to close it down. And so I felt really bad about the situation, and it was like seeing a relative die. It really was. Yeah. It was utterly heartbreaking to see something which you kind of founded, and the culture that was created there, and the games that were created there, and the memories that were created there is just heartbreaking to see. I mean, let's be honest about it. I don't really know the reasons that Microsoft closed them down, but I know, and I have an enormous amount of respect and confidence in people like Phil Spencer. And so they didn't do it out of spite or anything. They probably did it for very good reasons. And I just don't know what those reasons are. And it's easy for me to stand back and say, oh, well, they closed it, they're evil bastards. But actually, there must have been a good reason. It's still incredibly heartbreaking. And, if I could whiz back in a time machine and find a way to make it so that it wouldn't close, the way I would probably do that is say, right, you guys just work on Fable 4 rather than Fable Legends, then I would do that. But,
so you think 4 would have been the way. If you'd still been there, you would have pushed to continue the series proper rather than take the left turn into the sort of game as service?
You know, the thing is, the simple fact of the matter is that at the end of the day, whether you're an internal first-party studio or an external third-party studio, you've got to look at the bottom line.
Yeah.
You know, how much does it cost to develop something versus how much it's going to make? Now, it's fine, you know, when you look at the words free-to-play, and when Zynga were first coming out with free-to-play games, they were making a ton of money.
Oh, yeah.
A ridiculous, shameful amount of money. And indeed, Supercell and games like Clash of Clans still are making a lot of money today. And it's very easy to put those sort of forecasts in your balance sheet and then to justify, look, we can afford this much development because our bottom lines are going to be this. But as free-to-play has evolved, we've realized that it actually can only be applied to a certain type of game.
Right.
And that certain type of game certainly isn't Fable. You know, Fable for me is an open world game. It's a game which is about people's freedom, where free-to-play is about constricting people and keeping them along a path so you can be predictive about their spend. I know this because I've been developing these games myself because I find them fascinating. And that's not what Fable is. And so I feel that if you just think of it as being purely empirically a financial decision, free-to-play is going to make us this much, which is far, far less than what it's going to cost for us to develop the game. And that seems to be the probable outcome of a decision that actually happened.
You're, of course, no longer at Microsoft. You've got 22 cans. Yeah. But if Microsoft picked up the phone, if Phil Spencer called you and said, Peter, we would love to, we want to reboot Fable. Can you form a team? Can we work together on something? Has that ship sailed, or is there still enough of Fable?
I've played on that fantasy many, many, many times, Ryan.
So you would take that phone call then.
And up until relatively recently, I would definitely take the call. And
Phil?
let's just define it.
Yeah.
If that was going to happen, there's 3 things that would have to happen. Firstly, I would have to be able to say that it was going to be a great game. Not just another Fable, a great game.
Yeah.
That first line, that ridiculous first line that I said, the greatest role-playing game of all time, that would be the reason to do Fable 4. The second is the team. We'd have to bring together a team of people. And that team of people, there'll be some people that have worked on Fable for a long time, there'll be some that would never touch Fable before. But a great, fascinating, wonderful team. That would be the second one. And the third one is that I could be what I am now in Fable. And that is I am no longer a designer, I'm a coder. That's what I think of myself as, that's what I do every day. And that is absolutely, how I define myself.
So we need to get the Carter brothers involved again.
Yeah, we'll get the Carter brothers involved. We need to get the Carter. Here's your list.
Please.
Simon and Dean.
Phil's
Carter,
listening. He better
Simon
be.
and Dean Carter, Alex Evans from Media Molecule, Mark Healy from Media Molecule. Mark Healy did all in Fable 1, a lot of the visual direction. Paul McLaughlin, another artist. I'd probably go for Eric Bailey on the animation side, or people like Adam Siblick, and then round that core people build a team.
All right, we have the list of demands now.
But it's too late. It's too late,
It's
Ryan.
too late?
It's too late.
It's never too late.
No, it is. Because now I am doing the most incredible thing. I've been reborn.
For more of my IGN Unfiltered interview with Peter Molyneux, be sure to check back every week for a new segment and look for new episodes of Unfiltered every month.